I'ma need a couple days. Whoa.
That boy is Benny Honda.
Thought I was dead and gone. Came back on these boys with her brother life. Yeah. Touch me with air weed. Vampire mist for the line of light. Yeah. Please do not chase me. Don't break a sucker, I'm dynamite. Yeah. My build is OP. Toppling charge, say goodnight. Yeah. Puncturing sweet, man, I eat 'em up. Vampires, band, man, I heat 'em up. Pressure with dots, man, they freezing up. Cooking, I'm cooking like I'm in the lab. Got me surrounded, I hit 'em with bats. Purifying light, I hit 'em with jabs. Smoke them suckers like I'm hitting the dab. Yellow belly, man, they looking for cabs. You know I flex with the guild. I got like 8 of them kills. X in the mixing like Malcolm, I'm real. Do 'em dirty like I'm copping the field. Going ham like a cop in the field. Porky picking, man, I'm saucing on skill. Hits a Janus on Uranus. Hemorrhoid raging, man, they left it vacant. Mess around and snatch a scroll while I'm waiting. Roll on them like Jamaicans. Zerg babies, they be hating. Coming for me, but I'm waiting. Channel focus meditation. Looking like I'm on vacation. Channel focus meditation. Looking like I'm on vacation. Yeah, thought I was dead and gone. Came back on these boys with her brother life. Yeah. Touch me with air weed. Vampire mist for the line of light. Yeah. Please do not chase me. Don't break a sucker, I'm dynamite. Yeah. My build is OP. Toppling charge, say goodnight. Yeah. Templar, jabbing them just like I'm Ali. Put him to sleep like I'm Cosby. Trust me, can't nobody stop me. Templar, popping up just like a Nolly. You imposter, but I'm saucy. Wings on my back, man, I'm godly. Going gold like a Super Saiyan. Hitting hard like a moving nation. Chopping like a brother Asian. Sleeping on me, you get rude awakened. Ginseng, get a tea bag. Here going out, you can keep that. Permanent block, you get weed whack. Put me in a sticky situation. Treat the shit like a street sap. Buzzing, so please mind your beeswax. Javelin straight through your kneecap. Yeah. Treat the shit like a street sap. I'm buzzing, so please mind your beeswax. Javelin straight through your kneecap. Thought I was dead and gone. Came back on these boys with her brother life. Yeah. Press me with air weed. Vampire mist for the line of light. Yeah. Please do not chase me. Don't break a sucker, I'm dynamite. Yeah. My build is OP. Toppling charge, say goodnight. Yeah.
What's cracking, everybody? It's your boy Squiddy Kraken, aka King Calamari, aka Daddy Tentacles, aka Squiddy Pippin, and you know what this is. I'm back. I'm finally back. It's been a long time. I did take a quick break because I was playing Black Desert Online, and it's a good game. Don't get me wrong. It's a good game, but it doesn't have that same nostalgia. I don't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed Elder Scrolls Online. Plus, it doesn't have the class available for me to play Valkyrie on Xbox yet. So until that comes out, I'm probably not even going to touch Black Desert Online. But yeah, I'm glad to be back. I had to take a break. I just really had to take a break from ESO. I was getting really burnt out from it, but not because of any sort of core mechanics, just because the lag was so bad in Cyrodil that it was becoming unplayable as a solo group. I was having difficulty even in small group. You see what I'm saying? I was having difficulty even in a 3-man group with how bad the lag was. I can't speak for all platforms, but all my Xbox players, all my Xbox people, y'all know it was rough. It was horrendous, but a lot of that got fixed. So I'm gonna do my best to try to make this build video as short as possible. I've already probably went over a lot longer for the introduction to the build video, but I introduced to you the Preying Mantis, my new build, right? So I'll try not to talk as much You can go down to the description and see any of the timestamps. That should get you right to where you need to go. I'll try to make those. I try to make those as clear as possible. So we're gonna jump right into the stat sheet back bar. You can see the stats. I'm not even gonna talk about the stats. The only stat I will talk about is the critical resistance. The reason why that is low is because I still need to trait change a few items. That's all that is. That should go up to about 2,700, I believe. Yeah, so that's what we're looking like now. Obviously, the magic recovery will go up if you pop a pot, if you have a continuous, standing in your rune. I mean, we're really, you're looking at 1,500, but we're really looking at about 2,100 or 2,000 magic recovery. More than enough for me, at least. But there's other ways that you can bump that up as well. We are running the mage, right? We're still a vampire. But it's mainly because of the recovery that we get, stamina recovery and magic recovery. In addition to that, when you're low health, you become more difficult to kill when you're a vampire. You see what I'm saying? So we have kept that. However, we're not running any vampire moves. We're not running elusive mist. We're not running that. But I am running the mage to kind of make up for the fact that the meta right now is Breton, so to kind of make up for the fact that I don't get those 2,000, that flat 2,000 maximum magicka, right? But yeah, let's jump into the sets. As you can already see already, running willpower on the front bar. So if you're not running a, like a Breton or a dark elf, or I'm sorry, a Breton or a high elf, I highly suggest running willpower and not running Torx Pack. Torx Pack is the one that gives you spell damage instead of the 2-piece giving you maximum magicka. I'd suggest running maximum willpower. So willpower on the front bar, Nurned, sharpened. Enchants are up to you. I run a weapon damage increase. Okay. Shadowren for my monster headset. Some substitutes for this. Thervoken is really good. Does the same thing essentially. Gives you minor main. Right. That's very important. I like this one better, but Thervoken could potentially be better in group. Also, it could be better in an outnumbered situation. Like if you're like in a tower, or you're around line of sight, it's better. Actually, when you want to turtle up, it is better. It's better. But I like the fact that this actually does some damage while I take damage, so this is really good. Steadfast Hero is the next set. You guys saw this before. Ultra Instinct, Hiss God. I use Steadfast Hero. That's when I first introduced it to everybody in one of my builds. In that build, I ran Steadfast Hero and Init Axiom. In this build, I'm running Steadfast Hero and Overwhelming. Such a good set. You've seen me run it in my previous videos, in my previous build videos. I've used this set before. I'm so glad I can use this set again. Really solid. Spell damage, maximum magicka, and when you activate a class ability, you have a 15% chance to surround yourself with a torrent that deals 2,373 shock damage to the closest enemy within 12 meters of you every 1 second for 6 seconds. This is big boy damage. You may not think it's big boy damage, but really it's big boy damage. It's actually more big boy pressure, right? So that's what you want. You want pressure. You want to keep people on their back bar. This even allows you to put pressure on people when you're on your back bar. It's because when you activate a class ability, that includes Purge, that includes Honor the Dead, that includes your Room Focus, right? So even when you're defensive, you can still be offensive, which is why I like this set. And it's also why I like Shadowren, because obviously when you take damage, that'll come out. So you have, again, the potential to get that overwhelming to still be hitting people, as well as the Clan Fear doing damage to them. So while you're defensive, you still can be offensive, which is important, especially in an outnumbered situation when you're poking and prodding people's defenses while staying defensive. And then obviously I'm running Tri-Stat. You don't have to run Tri-Stat on this particular build at all. You can run all maximum magicka if you'd like. If you feel like that's more effective, you absolutely can run that. Honestly, I run 2-piece Tri-Stat because that works for me. I enjoy the more of the health and the more stamina. So when I swapped from Khajiit to Argonian, I lost a lot of that health. So that was like a big thing for me. That like really affected what I was doing. Okay. As far as the enchants on the jewelry, I'm running 2 recoveries, right? I'll upgrade this to purple here probably today or tomorrow. Really doesn't matter. Blue to purple, it doesn't really change. You can see the difference. Steadfast Hero does come in healthy, so just a heads up. If you have enough transmute crystals, pick up this setup. Definitely pick up Steadfast Hero. It should be relatively cheap, and then get the turn it to Arcane. Right. The reason why Steadfast Hero is so strong is, as I mentioned before, is because it gives us physical resist, spell resist, maximum health. Again, like I said, important because we went from Argonian to Khajiit. We lost some of our health. So we get into execute range a lot quicker than we did when we were playing as an Argonian. So that extra health is really nice. And then when you cleanse a negative effect from yourself or an ally, you gain major protection from 5 seconds. So essentially, you just play how you normally play, right? You got negative effects on you, you purge. This procs, you get major protection for 5 seconds. Every 5 seconds. It can only occur every 10 seconds. But basically what that means is that this has a 50% uptime, which means it's a 5-second cooldown. That's not a lot of time. That's not a lot of cooldown, which is the reason why we don't have to run Pirate Skeleton on this build at all. Instead of running Shadowrend, you obviously could, like I said, run Thorvoken, or you can run one piece Chudon, one piece Pirate Skeleton, and get the flat resist, and that's really nice as well, right? Yeah, so we're gonna talk about the skills a little bit. The skills have changed, right? So we actually have a flex spot in this skill, in this particular build, because when you go from dual wield to staff, or staff to dual wield, obviously you lose that weakness to elements, right? And so because you lose that weakness to elements, you actually gain a slot. So basically here you can either run Radiant Aura if you feel like you feel like you're missing some of that recovery that you got from weakness to elements. So you still get that minor magic still, right? So you get 300 every 1 second when damaging enemies. But in addition to this, you get all of your minors, right? So minor fortitude, minor endurance, minor intellect. So that's stamina, health, and magic recovery by 10%. Really, really solid. Really, really solid option. You can even go Solar Barrage. I use Solar Barrage here sometimes. I don't use Radiant Oppression, even though it comes out a lot quicker now. I still don't really like it. In a 1v1 situation, I don't like using channel. The only channel attack I like using in a 1vx situation is Puncturing Sweeps, because it's also an AoE damage effect as well. You get what I'm saying? And Execute, that's a channel to execute. Outnumbered is not good. In duels, this is amazing. This is great in duels. This is really, really solid in duels. Puts a lot of pressure on people. However, outnumbered, I never would probably recommend Radiant Oppression, personally. Yeah, and everything else is the same. So obviously we replaced Shock Clench or Fire Clench if you're using Fire Clench or Reach, whatever one. We replaced that with Toppling Charge. This got a huge buff. It now causes off balance regardless, right? So before you actually had to catch somebody slipping while they were hard casting frags or casting another particular ability. Now we don't have to do this now. We set them off balance for 5 seconds, right? And that can happen every 5 seconds, which is really, really solid. Yeah, and it comes out a lot quicker than it did before, so it's not as clunky. Again, like I mentioned in the beginning, this skill used to be a lot more clunky, right, and glitchy. So it wasn't really reliable. Now it's very reliable. And then the added benefit to that is now there is no range requirement, meaning you can gap close even if you're right in front of somebody. You can still gap close. That is absolutely phenomenal. It makes it so you don't have to back up in order to get your gap closed. So you know what I mean? It just integrates seamlessly in the Magplar kit, whereas before it was a bit too clunky to use. Purifying Light, this is very, very good. Obviously, everybody knows this skill. You can replace it, but in this particular setup with how I'm running it, I wouldn't advise replacing this. I don't think there's any good replacement for it. It's just very, very strong. Okay. Crescent Sweep, we still have this ulti. This ulti got buffed last patch, right? And it's amazing. Like, this does so much damage. It's an AoE. Yeah, it's just really, really, really good. Really solid. Really solid. Big damage. Crescent Sweep. And it only costs 72 ultimate. Only 72 ultimate. So enough said on that. Back bar. This also got buffed, right? Race Against Time. Instead of actually, so before this ability, it did the first part of that, which gave you Minor Force Expedition. But it used to reduce your cost of sprinting. That's what it used to reduce. They got rid of that particular portion of it, but instead gave it something way better, which is it activating this ability removes all snares and immobilization from you, grants immunity to them for 2 seconds. So again, in situations in which Purge would be too expensive to cast or not necessary to cast because you just had snares on you, that was the only negative effect. Now you can pop this and be straight, super straight. And so that's the reason why we run this. And I'm really glad they did this, because now it makes my Swamp Fever build, if you haven't seen that build, check that build out as well, even more viable. Like even more viable, right? Again, Total Dark, I don't really run this here. I don't run this here anymore. I don't really run Total Dark anymore. You can run Total Dark because it still gives you the heal. However, you can also run Harness Magicka here, which is pretty solid. I like Harness Magicka. As you can see, it gives a decent amount of it's a decent shield. But the thing is this is a good sustain tool, right? Because we don't have that weakness to elements. Outside of Harness Magicka, like I said, you can use Radiant Aura or you can use Harness Magicka. I suggest running one of those two. Wherever you want to run, you can run both, but I suggest running one of those tools as a sustain tool, because we can't heavy attack to get back Magicka because we're dual wield and sword and board. The meta setup for this could be, you still can run this exact same build how I run it, except for instead of running dual wield, all you'll do is you'll run a lightning staff and you can run sword and board, right? With that being said, you would just replace that, put weakness to element back on, and you still would be good to go. Plus you would get major breach, major breach, which means you would be hitting harder. So honestly, staff is still meta, so if you want to run this meta, just run a willpower lightning staff. Good to go. You get what I'm saying? I just don't want to run this meta. I just really like dual wielding. Yeah, so let's take a look at the passives, and then we'll move on to CP, and then we'll call it good, guys. We'll call it good. Get all your passives for your Magplar, right? All your Magplar passives. I won't jump into it. I've already jumped into it before. You can check out some of my other videos if you're curious, or you can just message me down the bottom and ask why I run some of these passives if you're curious. One hand, sword and shield, run all those. On my back bar, I didn't say the other ability that I do run Spell Wall. The reason why I run Spell Wall is because I don't run Total Dark now. So Spell Wall helps me deal with Mag Blades and Mag Sorks. Before, I was using Total Dark as a way to use their burst against them. But because they reduce the amount of damage that does, that's not as effective. And so I use Shield Wall to fill that same kind of gap. However, it means I can only really time my burst against really good Sorks and Mag Blades when I have my ultimate up, right? And a good Sork and a good Mag Blade, if they see this ultimate up, they're going to stop attacking. So Sorks and Mag Blades, good Mag Blades, are probably the only class that you'll really have some sort of trouble dealing with. Every other class is like, I don't have any issues with any other classes. Again, Destructive Staff, get all these if you're running staff. If you're not running staff at all, you don't need any of these, right? We're just talking about from a PvP standpoint. And then, of course, just the Twin Blade and Blunt for dual wield. If you're running sword and board, all those passives. Light armor, get all those passives. Medium armor, if you're running a 5-1-1 setup, which you should be running a 5-1-1 setup, you want Windwalker and Athletics. If you don't have Undaunted, right? If you don't have Undaunted, there's no reason to run a 5-1-1 setup, okay? So let's say you just made a Magplar. I suggest running a 5-2. Right? You run a 5-2, don't pick up these two, just get all your light armor passives, and you don't need all your heavy armor passives, but sometimes I fluctuate between heavy and light armor setups. So if you're running light armor, what you need is Resolve, Constitution, Juggernaut. You don't need these two. You just need the first 3 passives. Vampire, get all the passives except for Blood Ritual. If you want to play as a vampire, like I said, completely optional, up to you. I like it because of the supernatural recovery, increased magic and stamina recovery, and the undeath passive, right? Darkstalker is nice too, which makes you sneak faster while you're crouched, right? Fighter's Guild ability, I don't use any Fighter's Guild ability. I don't ever see myself going back to Dawnbreaker. There's no reason to do it. Our ulti is better. It's better for a Magplar to run that. We no longer have to run Dawnbreaker, which is nice. We don't have to go outside of our kit for this. As far as this goes, this all really depends on if you're running Structured Entropy or Degeneration. I run Spell Power Pots, Alliance Pots, which gives you major sorcery. However, if you have a lot of money and you have, I'd say Tripods would be the best to run with that. And then your flex spot here would just be Degeneration. So you'd replace Radiant Aura or any of your other abilities with Degeneration, right? Or Structured Entropy, preferably Degeneration. And then Psijic Order, you can run Temporal Guard on your back if you want minor protection. A lot of people do that. However, it doesn't provide you a lot of protection against Sorks, right? The minor protection is cool, but we're tanky enough, man. We really don't need it because we get major protection off of our set. Clairvoyance is the main one you want. You can pick this one up as well. Concentrated Barrier. It's a nice little damage shield. It really isn't. It's not strong or whatever, but it's something, right? It's still something. Deliberation is nice as well. You want Deliberation as well. Undaunted. If you have Undaunted, pick up everything from Undaunted. Everything, all the passives out of the Assault tree. Just Combat, Medic, and Battle Resurrection out of the Support tree, and then all your class passives. So that's pretty much what it is. Let's jump into Champion tree. I was just gonna leave that, but this one I had so many changes, and with this patch I made so many changes in my CP, and it's really made a difference. So we got Warlord and Sprinter, perfect. We have 27 into Sprinter because we sprint a lot. We're not running Elusive Mist, so most of our line of sight results in us pressing Race Against Time and like moving, you know what I mean, like just getting out of there. So you'll sprint a lot with this build. Arcanist 56, Mooncap 56, Tenacity 19. You don't necessarily, if you don't heavy attack a lot, you know what I mean, what you could do is drop points out of Tenacity and instead split the rest between Mooncalf and Arcanist, or put them all into Arcanist or put them all in Mooncalf, your choice. 56 into Warlord. You block a lot in this build. You do roll dodge occasionally, but to me it still isn't enough to warrant actually putting a lot of points into Tumbling, if that makes sense. All right, next tree. Elfborn, this is a big change here. You can get this to 20% because I'm running a Khajiit. We have Minor Force. We have Khajiit that gives extra damage from critical healing and critical damage, and we get Elfborn. This is where we're getting a lot of our damage. A lot of our damage is coming from critical attacks, right? That's where we're getting a big boy damage from critical attacks. So you want this at least 15%. Spell Erosion, I like having this high. The reason why this is high at 4,000 is because we're not running Weakness to Elements. If we were running Weakness to Elements, then I would say you don't necessarily need all these many points into Spell Erosion because you get Major Breach. You could put the rest of them into Elfborn, Elfborn or Blessed. But really, you don't need to put points into Blessed, not as a Magplar. You're better off putting points into Elfborn or something else. Your healing received is more important. 56 in the Master of Arms. Again, like I said, if you're running Weakness to Elements, you could even put some of these points into Staff Expert if you're running a Staff. You don't need points into Shattering Blows. You don't need points into Shattering Blows. You don't need points into Shattering Blows. I'll say that again. Don't put points into Shattering Blows. But the most important thing as far as our damage goes is this big boy damage right here. 75 in the Thaumaturge. So that means all of our stuff is hitting really hard. Now, initially, I would have said that this is a bit overkill, but it's not at this time. Because of the changes in our gap close that puts people off balance every 5 seconds. That means every 5 seconds, as long as you're gap closing, you increase your damage done against off balance enemies by 10%. So that's an extra 10%. This is the reason why we're hitting so hard. We're hitting ridiculously hard with this build, but we're still really defensive. So I'll jump into the red tree real quick, finish it off. 56 in the ironclad, 38 into resistance. You can change that if you would like to. I'm fine with the crit resist that I have. I don't really need any more crit resist. If I took points out of stuff, I'd probably take stuff out of thick skin. Just because we do have access to purge, we really don't need that many points in the thick skin. But it is helpful because if you get caught on your front bar, for instance, you get CC'd. And when you're playing outnumbered, this is where this kind of comes into play. If you get CC'd on your front bar and you're unable to purge, you're going to be taking a lot of damage, right? So I find that in those particular situations, I'm glad that I have thick skin when I'm playing with 2 or 3 people. So if I'm playing with Truth, K7, or Sketchy, I feel like I don't necessarily need that amount of points in the thick skin, right? Light armor focus, I did buff this up a bit because I'm not running super defensive, you know what I mean? Like I don't have a ridiculously high amount of physical or spell resist. It's just respectable. Yeah, so 43 into all this, 28 armor, unchained, passive, we want that. 19 into quick recovery, and that's it. So hope you guys like the build, man. I'm telling you, it's very strong. You'll see some more gameplay on it. You guys saw some of the gameplay in the beginning. Super strong build, man, and glad to be back. So I'll see y'all when I see y'all. Let me know how it works out for y'all. Hopefully it works. Hopefully this brings Melee Magplar back. Hopefully we'll see a lot more Melee Magplars because, I mean, we're back in effect, man. So until the next time, I'll see you when I see you.
No, we don't play games, except when we play games. Well, now, finessing my campaign. My squad in the party, you know that that's gang. Oh, you see my KD, I'm not talking KD. Well, now, we not on the same team, you not in the same stream.